Alright, we're very happy to be here at Glen Lee Learning Centre. A very good afternoon, everyone. And seated beside me is a passionate and dedicated educator of his time, Glen himself. So Glen, please tell us, who you are and also what subjects you teach.
Hi, my name is Glen Lee. So I've been teaching math and science for the last 10 years. So the subjects I teach for primary school will be math and science. For secondary school will be E-Math, A-Maths, Physics and Chemistry. For JC will be H1 Math and H2 Math.
Wow, sounds like a very, very versatile educator we have over here. And of course, this is where you have a great array of subject offerings right here at Glen Lee Learning Centre. Okay, alright Glen, so you've been teaching for some time now, and in your professional opinion, how do you think students best absorb and retain knowledge?
In my opinion, science is about understanding how things works, and math is about using numbers to solve everyday problems. So the students must first understand the concepts clearly, be clear about the framework, and really appreciate the connection to how things work and solving everyday problems. Once students are able to achieve all of this, they will end up loving the subjects, just like some of my students do.
Yes, indeed. It's all about passion in this very, very real but complex educational landscape. Right, so could you give us an example or scenario as to when you observed this happening, please?
So I have this student who used to hate science a lot. So there was one day I asked her, Renee, what are you doing? Then she told me, Teacher Glenn, I'm copying the textbook, copying the notes down. So I asked her, why do you copy the notes? And why do you copy the textbook? She said, this is the way I study, Teacher Glenn. The more I copy, the more I can remember. So as a teacher, I was very shocked. So I told Renee, you should actually sit down and think about the things that you study from the textbook. How does it relate to our daily lives? And with that, she said, oh, okay. Then she went to take 2 math nets and she started to try, and she understand about the concept of attraction and repulsion. Then next, she started to rub her hands together to understand the concept of friction and producing heat. And nowadays, she look at me and tell me, Teacher Glenn, I no longer hate science. It's like one of my favorite subjects now. And this is one example that when students start to be able to relate to their daily life, the concepts, they'll end up loving the subjects.
Indeed. And again, it's all about passion right here. And of course, as our educator himself says, it's going beyond the 4 walls of the classroom. Alright, so as we admit, in this ever-changing educational landscape, teaching as a job is becoming more and more complex. What would you say are some of the learning constraints your students face, and also some of the challenges you find in bringing across your lessons?
I think for now, currently, because of the technology, so there are a lot of distraction. All my students have phone. They have mobile phones, so they have their mobile games, their social apps. So they also have a lot of dramas they can catch on. Then this causes a lot of them to actually lose focus, lose their concentration, and they have a tendency to rush through their work, which ultimately actually decreases their productivity and the effectiveness of their revision. And the second point will be their studying techniques. So a lot of students tend to want to just, faster, choose the easy way out, and they will tend to copy the textbook answers, the textbook notes, the assessment book answers, and just to handle the immediate exams. Of course, for the immediate exams, then it does help a little bit, but in the long run, they will not be able to retain the information, and it will not help in the long run. So once students are able to apply the right studying techniques, they will be able to study more effectively, efficiently, and ultimately do well and have more me time for themselves.
Absolutely, Glenn. I totally concur with that. It's all about, discovering what works best for that particular learner profile. Okay, so on that note, Glenn, which SAP book series would you most recommend to your students?
I'll recommend to my students the Quick Exam series, which is this one. It contains all the necessary information which is in the O-level syllabus, and it breaks down to it shows all the definition, all the formulas, and there are also example questions for the students to revise. So it really helps with their revision, especially when before the exam, the 3 hours before exam, it will be really, really useful, and also it's very small and it's easy for them to hold on to it, carry everywhere they go. And another one I will recommend would be the pocket notes.
Oh, wow.
Because it's so small and handy, and it contains all the formulas. So for students to actually revise the 20 plus chapters in the math is really very useful, and they can carry it everywhere they go, especially it can even be inserted into the pocket now.
Wow, indeed, Glenn. As the name suggests, pocket notes, it can go right into the pocket. Very, very handy as a revision guide.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah.
Alright, Glenn, so the keyword over here is challenge. Now, speaking about overcoming challenges, has Singapore Asia Publishers Books helped you to do that in any way?
Yes, SAP books have helped to overcome some of the challenges that I face when I was trying to guide my students to study the right methods. Especially the concept map in SAP books. It shows the what, the why, and the how. So it breaks down all the information into bite sizes and show the entire framework of the topics. This proved to be very useful when it comes to revision. And in terms of the application, students are able to see the connection between the topics for each subject. This is very important, as for each subject there are a lot of topics. And overall, this really facilitates in effective revision for all my students. And this is how SAP books have helped me to assist my students in their studies.
Right, indeed. I totally agree on that, because any classroom facilitation is as good as the curricula itself. So in order to facilitate an effective lesson, we go right down to the basics, which are the books. So Glenn, how has SAP books specifically assisted your students in their learning journey? For example, are they less resistant towards the subject? Has it improved their grades or their attitude towards learning?
Okay. After using SAP books, some of my students have improved from failing grades or just passing to Bs and even As. In terms of attitude and aptitude, they're more disciplined and organized. They're more willing to take up the time to revise regularly, as the topical revision books have summarized the content, and it makes revision easier for them. So students are able to revise more regularly during their spare time, and the topical question handbook also makes it more convenient for students when it comes to topical revision. They are more receptive towards revision, as they only need to carry 2 books now, which is the topical revision book, the topical question book, which are very small, portable, and they don't need to carry their heavy textbook with them everywhere. With these 2 books, they can go anywhere, everywhere, and revise.
Yeah, I agree, Glenn. I can't agree more, because they can be ready for anything, any assessment or any test. And of course, all these books that you've just mentioned instills a great deal of commitment and discipline. So again, Glenn, we're so happy that you're here joining this interview. Now, before we go, would you have any parting message for your viewers out there?
Do pop by our website at glennylearningcenter.com for 1 hour free consultation and assessment. See you soon.
Alright, thank you. So that was Mr. Glenn Lee himself, a leading educator of his time, and we're here live at Glenn Lee Education Center, where passion is education and your ambition are your results.